Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Today we're joined by Rostyslav Khotin. He's a senior editor at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, to analyse the outcomes of the latest EU leaders' summit. From strategic autonomy and energy reform to a potentially historic trade agreement with the United States, European leaders are navigating complex global pressures to reinforce competitiveness and reduce dependencies. What do these developments mean for the EU's immediate future? Well, let's speak to Rostyslav for his view. Rostyslav, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Pleasure as always. Now, before we kick off, there is a short video clip of Ursula von der Leyen speaking at the summit earlier today about what happened with her meeting with Donald Trump. It's coming up now.
Today, we received the latest US document for further negotiations. We are assessing it as we speak right now. So our message today is clear. We are ready for a deal. At the same time, we are preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. This is why we consulted on a rebalancing list, and we will defend the European interest as needed. In short, all options remain on the table.
Right. Your initial comments on that statement, Rostyslav?
I think that the main thing is to understand that Europe doesn't need a trade war with the United States. And America doesn't need a trade war with Europe. To rule the world, to be a global leader, America needs allies. I don't see any other strong allies for American geopolitical interests for the United States of America rather than Europe. Europe is possibly the only serious, reliable, powerful ally of America, if America indeed wants to be a global leader, a global superpower, and wants further rule the world, in fact. So the main thing is now to avoid this trade war, the tariff war between the European Union, Europe in general, and the United States. Only American adversaries will rejoice when there will be trade war between America and Europe, and generally speaking, the disagreements or political war between Europe and America, like Russia, like China, others. America needs to be present in Europe. America needs to be in Europe politically. America needs to be in Europe militarily. America needs to be in Europe economically, and so on and so forth. So, and for Europeans as well, the main thing is to preserve this trust in American leadership and not to be frustrated with some kind of ups and downs in American-European relations. I think that both America and Europe will benefit from an economic point of view and generally from geopolitical point of view if there will be a strong partnership between both sides of the Atlantic.
Understood, Rostyslav. So to me it sounds as though you're saying, you're rather optimistic and some solution will be worked out. There'll be no tariff war. But Ursula von der Leyen referred to a plan B, a rebalancing, she called it. What does this tell you about the thinking and that's going on inside the European Union, in the sense that, does the EU now have to start thinking differently about partners in other parts of the world as well?
Yes, of course, there should be Plan B just in case if the Trump administration goes into this trade war with the European Union. But for instance, the big losers will be American high-tech companies, which do a lot of business on the European continent. Also, some countries they have of course, there should be something should be done if some countries like Germany or Italy, especially Italy, for instance, or Ireland, they have a big trade, positive trade saldo with America, and Americans have trade deficit with them. There should be kind of these disbalances should be avoided. There should be more or less, or they should be on equal footing. America should not. It should not be a lose-lose game for America. It should be like win-win for both America and Europe. But Americans also should remember that Europe has alternatives. China, for instance, very much isn't kind of looking into possibilities of economic expansion in the European Union. China wants to trade with the EU. China wants to kind of see EU as a counterweight to American influence globally. So America should be worried about Chinese influence in Europe. America should worry about Russian influence in Europe. Okay, now there is a war in Ukraine, and Russian influence in Europe, trade deals, economic relations are in kind of limbo, are reduced to minimum. But until now, Russia was the main partner for the European Union in terms of energy, gas, oil, and so on and so forth. So Americans should be jealous and should not take for granted when the Europeans want to trade and want a real and solid partnership with Americans. So it's an American interest actually to seduce Europeans. Yes.
Understood. But Rostislav, are you getting the sense that Europe is starting to wake up to the possibility that actually, it needs to be more self-reliant economically in terms of defence, in terms of its international relationships, than it's needed to in the past? So, for example, the EU is meeting in Japan, in China, in the upcoming months. Is Europe shifting its position in the world as a result of these conversations and also as a result of the war in Ukraine?
Yes, I mean, the Trump administration gave many hints that Europe should not take for granted American partnership. They should look for alternatives. Yes, they should do their homework, especially militarily in terms of defense industries. Europeans should not rely only on American military protection, on American security guarantees. Europe should do its homework as well, and so far so good, I think. Especially the Hague summit of NATO Hague summit earlier this week showed that Europeans awakened by Trump's insistence on increasing defense spending in Europe. And I think Trump is completely right. During his first term, he demanded 2% of GDP to be spent on defense purposes, defense aims, purposes. Now he brought this plank increase to 3.5% plus up to 5% on general with military industrial complexes as well, not just % defense spending of 3.5% of GDP on armies and arms and ammunitions, but also generally on security sector and defense industries. Now the plank is standing at 5%. The demand is at 5%, and it's a justifiable action by Trump administration, taking into account that sooner or later, but there might be clash between NATO and Russia, between Europe and Russia. You can't exclude Russian military expansion into Europe or imperial projections on European continents from the Kremlin in the near future. 3-5 years, Europe should be ready to defend itself against any potential Russian aggression.
Understood.
Also, China is very active in the Arctic and other regions where NATO also sees it as a kind of its backyard. So there should be readiness and preparedness of Europe not to take American security guarantees and protection for granted and do your homework themselves.
Okay,
Europeans
I need to interrupt you here because I do want to, Rostislav, I do want to get on to a couple of other points in the little time that we have left. In terms of trade competitiveness, now the EU, and another outcome of this summit, has been talking about streamlining its bureaucracy, making procedures simpler so that trade is easier to carry out both within the EU and also external to the European Union. About time, isn't it? I mean, it's always been seen as a lumbering bureaucracy, the European Union, where it's difficult to get anything done quickly. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the Europeans should do something about bureaucracy. European Commission and other bodies of the EU should not be there is even term coined by journalists like European bureaucrats, Eurocrats, like a skeptical term, Eurocrats. There should be done something about this. There should be rebranding, reform itself, less bureaucracy, more efficiency, quicker decisions. There should be something should be done about the voting rights in the European Union. The European Union could not be hostage to Hungarian or Slovak vetoes. There should be some kind of mechanism when one country with questionable democratic credentials could block the whole system of decision-making of the European Union. When
so do you think that
package of sanctions against Russia?
Do you think that is a possibility?
Because of veto and so on.
Yes. Do you think it's a possibility, or there's a way of getting around the vetoes of Hungary and Slovakia?
On some strategic issues like sanctions, like strategic making the decision, there should be decisions. There should not be veto of one small country which blocks the whole continent. 500 million people are hostages to Viktor Orban or Robert Fico in Slovakia. Next package of sanctions was delayed because of Slovak veto. The opening of clusters for Ukrainian EU integration was blocked by Viktor Orban of Hungary. Ukraine is fighting war of survival, defending also not just itself but Europe. And Orban blocks European integration of Ukraine. Ukrainians are fighting for European future. There should be ways around it somehow to streamline this kind of decision-making to a more positive kind of
Well,
mode.
we look forward to that happening, Rostislav. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but thank you, as always, for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to this end of this episode of World Talks, but don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.